That power is getting ready to be put back in us. For those who believe and have ears, that power that Yahushua had on the earth, we're going to get that and more. And we're going to get those heavenly bodies, man. See, Yahushua died on the cross and went through all that he went through so he can go back on the right-hand side and be glorified. We're fighting and making our bodies a living sacrifice so that we can eventually be back glorified with him as well as we were before the foundation of the earth.
The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. And if children, then heirs of God, and joint heirs with God. If so be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creature waited for the manifestation of the sons of God. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who hath subjected the same, in hope, because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. And not only they, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body.
Eternal life. That's what's promised to the elect. All right, all Israel. But it starts with the elect. And that's how the earth will be governed by immortals, perfect angelic forces who are going to come down and rule on earth. Extraterrestrial bodies will be able to do things that humans do, but in heavenly bodies. Like eating, drinking. Did not Yahushua say he's going to drink wine with us in the kingdom? Well, how do you drink wine with a spiritual body? Well, we're going to have out of this world capabilities in those bodies.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Kakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessing salutations to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, push them to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah. All right, and what I want to get into today, dealing with, the original, all right, D-boy, all right, going into one of the legacies of Esau Edom, okay, because as, this man, has, used, drugs for profit and also used them as a means to wage war on Jake, from, the chemicals standpoint, all right, and from also, okay, the standpoint of the dealers, because the devil, he'll put drugs, all right, in Jake neighborhoods, okay, and Jake, you have the dealers, or naturally you're going to have people that's going to deal these drugs, okay, and the people that they're dealing them to is suffering from the chemicals in the drugs, and then the people that dealing the drugs, okay, die or go to prison. Okay, so it was just a win all the way around for Esau, the way that he dealt with drugs, okay, and the way that he used drugs as a way, to devastate, Jake neighborhoods. All right, well, we see today, okay, even when you think of a YN, well, a YN is the results, okay, of drugs in the community, okay, drugs, all right, dope boys, you see, well, all this is a result of Esau Edom. You look at the community of Jake, the poverty, you look at some Jake communities like a third world country where all this a ripple effect of the drugs. Okay, they devastated Jake. They ripped apart families. Okay, made people not functional. All right, create this surplus of money. Okay, create this surplus of violence. Okay, and then it became glorified as a culture. Okay, to where it's been perpetrated from generation to generation. All right, so this devil, he's done a lot. Okay, with these drugs. Okay, so what I want to go to is how much of a hypocrite this guy is. Okay, because a lot of these American families, these Edomites, these wealthy American Edomite families, well, they got their start, all right, from drugs. Matter of fact, let's get this and have a cook, and then we'll get that video. All right, let's get this and have a cook. Now, Jake, continue to participate, in that madness is guilty, all the information, and then we see the results of, the destruction, okay, that they have done. The profit from the drugs is nowhere near worth, okay, the destruction, okay, that those drugs have done. Okay. Habakkuk 2 and 15 said, woe unto him that giveth his neighbor drink, that putteth thy bottle to him and maketh him drunken also, that thou mayest look on their nakedness. Okay, and this devil, he gave our people everything needed to destroy themselves, from a philosophy, going to feminism to, a product of drugs, okay, weaponry, you see, and then he glorified it all as a culture, and now as Jake, shame themselves in this culture, he can just step back, turn the camera on and say, look at these niggas. Okay, this is what the devil has done. Okay, and Jake is drunken, okay, with the wine of the enemy. Okay, well, see what the Lord said, verse 16, thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory. So now the Lord is exposing this devil, okay, and all his wickedness that he's conjured up behind the scene. You see, when you investigate, okay, the problems in the earth, well, they all go back to what they say, the usual suspect. Okay, every major problem that's going on in the planet Earth, okay, every discrepancy can be rooted back to this nigga, man. And now it's being found out. Okay, and he's been called out, mainly by the prophets. Okay, but then you have, the spirit of expose on the devil. Okay, other nations call this nigga out. Okay, and we're gonna watch this video, and it's gonna show you the pure wickedness of this nigga, man. Okay, and he don't give a damn. Don't give a damn. Okay, been like this, man. You see, everybody else just catching up, but been not giving a damn out here. Okay, and so let's go straight to it. All right, and this part is shameful spewing. And Esau loves to try to, cover these things up, but the Lord had an appointed time when everything will come to the light. All right, so let's go here. I'm gonna let most of it play. I might comment, but the whole video is informative, and also, Lord willing, we get through most of it. So let's go here.
Forbes, Yale, Harvard. You know these names. What you don't know, they all got rich the exact same way. Flooding China with opium, thousands of tons, millions addicted, 400% profit. And then they spent 200 years making sure you'd never find out. Until now, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the president on Mount Rushmore, the man who saved America from the Great Depression. His family fortune came from selling drugs, hard drugs, opium, millions of addicts, millions dead. And the Roosevelts got rich, very rich. And they weren't alone. The Astors, the wealthiest family in America. Drug money, Forbes magazine, built on opium profits. Yale's Skull and Bones, funded by drug smugglers. Harvard buildings, paid for with Chinese opium silver. Some of the most powerful families in American history, the institutions that that educate our leaders, the dynasties that still run this country, all of it was built by flooding China with drugs, industrial scale, thousands of tons, 400% profit margins. And then they buried the evidence, rewrote the history books, built libraries and museums with the blood money, and made sure you'd never find out, until now. Because the shipping records exist, the letters survive, the account books are in archives. And what they reveal is that America's aristocracy, the families we're taught to respect, made their fortunes doing exactly what we imprison people for today. Except they did it to an entire country, poisoned millions, destroyed the Chinese economy, and got so rich they could erase it from history. This is the story they don't want you to know. The drug dealers who became American royalty, and how they got away with it for 200 years. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 32nd President of the United States, led America through the Great Depression and World War II. His face is on Mount Rushmore alongside Washington, Jefferson, and Lincoln. An American hero. But here's what they don't teach you in school. The fortune that funded FDR's privileged upbringing, his education at Harvard, his entry into politics, all of it came from drug money. His grandfather, Warren Delano II, made millions smuggling opium into China. Millions of Chinese became addicted. Millions died. And the Delano family got rich, very rich. And they weren't alone. The Astors, the richest family in America in the 1800s, opium money, the Forbes family. Yes, that Forbes built their publishing empire on opium profits. The Perkins family funded Yale University with opium money. The Cabot family, Boston Brahmins, opium traders. The Russell family founded Skull and Bones at Yale University. Opium smugglers. Some of the most powerful, most respected, most influential families in American history built their fortunes selling drugs. Not just participating, dominating. American companies controlled 10% of the opium trade into China by the 1830s. We're talking tons of opium, hundreds of millions of dollars, an entire generation of Chinese destroyed by addiction, and American families got so rich they founded universities, museums, and political dynasties that still run the country today. This is the story no one tells. How America's elite families made their fortunes in the opium trade, how they whitewashed that history, and how the same families that got rich selling drugs then spent a century criminalizing drugs for everyone else. The hypocrisy is staggering, and the proof is undeniable. Before we go through the families, you need to understand what the opium trade actually was, not the sanitized museum version, the reality. In the early 1800s, Britain had a problem. They were buying massive amounts of tea, silk, and porcelain from China, but China didn't want anything Britain produced. So Britain was paying in silver, draining their reserves. They needed something to sell to China, something Chinese people would buy in massive quantities. They found it. Opium. Grown in British-controlled India, refined into smokable form and smuggled into China where it was illegal. The Chinese government had banned opium. They knew it was poison. But British and American traders didn't care. The profit margins were 400, 500%. You could buy opium in India for $100, smuggle it into China, and sell it for $500, $600.
So the Chinese government banned opium. Okay, but the British said, damn that. All right, y'all gonna take this opium. Okay, so they began to smuggle opium into China. Okay, now these devils love to talk about, humanitarian, okay, these tyrannical leaders of these other nations. Okay, this nigga is a hypocrite on another level. Okay, this a supposedly sovereign government said, look, we have banned opium, and Esau floods it with opium.
$100. Risk was high. Chinese authorities
I had just recently gotten married.
would execute smugglers if caught, but the profits were worth it, and American families wanted in. Because American ships were faster than British ships, clipper ships, built for speed. Perfect for outrunning Chinese naval patrols and delivering opium to secret coastal locations. American captains would sail to British India, load up with thousands of pounds of opium, sail to the Chinese coast, and wait offshore at designated anchorage points. Chinese smugglers would row out in small boats, take the opium, pay in silver. The American ships never technically entered Chinese ports, plausible deniability, and the silver flowed back to America, tons of it. This went on for decades, 1800s to 1840s before the Opium Wars, then continued after. Millions of Chinese became addicted. The Chinese economy was devastated. Silver was flowing out of China into British and American coffers. And in America, the families getting rich from this used the money to build legitimate empires. Let's look at who they were. Let's start with the most famous, the Delanos, FDR's family. Warren Delano II was born in 1809 in Massachusetts. At 19 years old, he went to China to work for a trading company. By age 24, he was a partner in Russell and Company, the largest American opium trading firm in China. Russell and Company wasn't just participating in opium trade. They dominated American involvement. They had offices in Canton, Guangzhou. They had clipper ships. They had connections with British opium growers in India, and they made millions. Warren Delano ran the operation from 1833 to 1846, 13 years of opium smuggling. He returned to America a very wealthy man. How wealthy? Rich enough to build a 40-room mansion in Newburgh, New York. Rich enough to send his children to the best schools. Rich enough that when he lost money in the Panic of 1857, he could go back to China, make another fortune in opium, and return even wealthier. His daughter, Sarah Delano, married James Roosevelt. Their son was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. FDR grew up in wealth, private tutors, Harvard, political connections, all funded by opium money. And here's the kicker. In 1935, while FDR was president, he signed the first federal laws strictly controlling drugs, the Marijuana Tax Act precursor and expansion of narcotic controls. The man whose family fortune came from selling drugs to Chinese people spent his presidency criminalizing drugs for Americans. The irony is thick. Now let's look at the Astors. John Jacob Astor. At one point, the richest man in America. His wealth built the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, funded libraries, created a dynasty. Where did the money come from? Furs, right? That's the story. He traded furs, true. But that's not where the real money came from. Opium. John Jacob Astor's ships sailed to China starting in 1800. His ship, the Macedonian, made regular opium runs. Astor didn't just trade furs for Chinese goods. He traded Turkish opium for Chinese silver, then used that silver to buy furs, tea, and silk. The opium trade was the profitable leg that made everything else work. By 1840, Astor was worth $20 million. That's $500 million in today's money, most of it from opium profits. His great-grandson, John Jacob Astor IV, died on the Titanic as one of the richest men in the world. That wealth, built on opium. The Astor family name is on libraries, museums, university buildings, all of it funded by drug money from China. The Forbes family, yes, that Forbes. Malcolm Forbes, the magazine publisher billionaire, his family fortune started in China. The Forbes family of Boston sent ships to China in the early 1800s. Robert Bennett Forbes and his brother John Murray Forbes were major opium traders. They worked with Russell and Company, the same firm Warren Delano worked for. Robert Forbes captained clipper ships that carried opium. John Forbes invested the profits into railroads and became one of the wealthiest men in Boston. Their descendants used that wealth to start Forbes magazine. The family became American aristocracy, and it all started with opium. John Murray Forbes is celebrated in Boston as a great businessman and philanthropist. There are statues of him, buildings named after him. No one mentions the opium. It's been scrubbed from the official history. The Perkins family, Thomas Handesed Perkins. T.H. Perkins, as he was known in Boston, one of the wealthiest men in New England in the 1800s. Funded hospitals, asylums, schools. How did he make his money? Opium. Perkins was a founding partner of Perkins and Company, which later merged with Russell and Company. He ran opium from Turkey and India into China for decades, made millions, then retired to Boston and became a respected philanthropist. Yale University's Perkins Fellowship, named after the family, funded by opium money. The Perkins School for the Blind in Boston, opium money. Thomas Perkins is remembered as a great man. The opium part is a footnote, if mentioned at all. The Russell family. Samuel Russell founded Russell and Company in 1823. It became the dominant American opium trading firm in China. Russell made an enormous fortune, retired to Connecticut, and in 1832, his cousin William Huntington Russell co-founded Skull and Bones at Yale University. Skull and Bones, the secret society that has produced presidents, Supreme Court justices, CIA directors, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, John Kerry, all bonesmen. The Russell family fortune that helped establish Yale's most powerful secret society came from opium. Samuel Russell's money also helped fund the Russell Trust, which still funds Skull and Bones operations today. The most powerful secret society in America was built on Chinese opium money. The Cabot family, Boston Brahmins, old money, respected. Their wealth came from trading with China in the early 1800s. Guess what they traded? Opium. The Cabot family name is everywhere in Boston. Cabot House at Harvard, streets named Cabot, but the opium connection is never mentioned. The Low family, Abiel Abbott Low, another prominent opium trader, ran clipper ships to China, made millions. His son, Seth Low, became president of Columbia University and mayor of New York City. The family donated money to build Low Memorial Library at Columbia. Opium money built an Ivy League library. Here's the pattern. American families go to China in the early 1800s. They work for opium trading firms or start their own. They make enormous fortunes smuggling opium. They return to America. They invest in railroads, real estate, and legitimate businesses. They become respectable. They fund universities, museums, libraries, and hospitals. They erase the opium connection from their family histories. Their descendants become American aristocracy, and no one talks about where the money came from. This wasn't small scale. By the 1830s, American firms controlled about 10% of the opium flowing into China. British firms controlled most of the rest, but Americans were significant players. Russell and Company alone shipped thousands of chests of opium annually. Each chest contained about 140 pounds, thousands of pounds of opium, year after year. The scale was industrial, and the profits were massive. A single successful opium voyage could return 400 to 500% profit. Ship captains and company owners became millionaires. In 1830s, money. That's multimillionaire or billionaire level today, and this continued for decades. Even after the Opium Wars, which China fought specifically to stop the opium trade, American firms kept smuggling. They just got better at hiding it. Let's talk about what this opium did to China. By the 1830s, an estimated 10 to 12 million Chinese were addicted to opium, about 10% of the adult male population. The addiction was so widespread it crippled the Chinese economy. Silver that should have stayed in China was flowing out to pay for opium. The Chinese government tried to stop it. They appointed Commissioner Lin Zexu to end the trade. In 1839, Lin confiscated and destroyed 1,000 tons of British opium in Canton. Britain's response? War. The First Opium War, 1839-1842. Britain won, forced China to sign the Treaty of Nanking. China had to pay reparations, open ports to British trade, and cede Hong Kong. The treaty didn't explicitly legalize opium, but it made enforcement impossible.
That's crazy work. Here it is, you're selling a narcotic into my country that I've banned. You're ruining my working class. You're ruining my economy. Okay? And I destroy what you're smuggling. And you're saying that that's a declaration of war for destroying your property that you smuggled into my country. And then I lose the war and have to pay reparations, okay, and become more lax on opium smuggling. Crazy work. This is the devil, man. Okay, he make the rules as he go.
So the opium trade expanded. American firms benefited enormously because during the war, British firms couldn't operate. American firms like Russell and Company took over their business. After the war, both British and American opium smuggling resumed at even higher levels. The Second Opium War, 1856-1860, happened for the same reason. China tried to stop the trade. Britain and France went to war, forced China to legalize opium and open more ports. American firms again profited during and after.
Pictures say 1,000 words. All right. And that's, a lot of Czech neighborhoods look like this today. And Esau is like this today. A picture say 1,000 words. Okay. This is the same thing that crack did. You see, Esau run the same playbook all throughout the earth. Okay, just on different people. You see? Destroy him that destroy the earth, man. All right, the one and only, the original D-boy.
After the war, the human cost in China was catastrophic. Millions addicted, families destroyed, the economy wrecked. But in Boston, New York, and Connecticut, American families were building mansions and founding universities. Here's the most infuriating part. The same families that made fortunes selling opium then turned around and criminalized drugs for everyone else. In the early 1900s, America led the international movement to ban opium. The Hague Opium Convention of 1912, the Harrison Narcotics Act of 1914. America pushed global drug prohibition. Why? Because by then, American elites had already made their money. Chinese immigration to America meant opium dens were opening in American cities. The elites didn't want competition. They didn't want American workers getting addicted like Chinese workers had. And they certainly didn't want anyone pointing out that their own fortunes came from the drug trade. So they criminalized it, painted opium users as criminals and degenerates, and buried the history of how their own families had mass-marketed the same drug to China. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, whose grandfather made millions in opium, signed some of the toughest drug laws in American history. The families that got rich from drugs spent the 20th century prosecuting and imprisoning people for drugs. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. And here's what makes it even worse. The history has been whitewashed. Most Americans have no idea that the Delano, Astor, Forbes, Perkins, Russell, and Cabot families made their fortunes in opium. Go to the FDR Presidential Library. The Delano family's opium connection is mentioned in one small exhibit, downplayed as trade with China. Go to the Astor family history. Opium is barely mentioned. It's all about furs and real estate. The Forbes family history. They talk about railroads and magazines, not opium. Yale University mentions Samuel Russell as a benefactor. The opium business that funded him? Not mentioned. Harvard's Cabot House, named after the Cabot family, their opium trading? Not in the official history. The whitewashing has been systematic and thorough. And these families used their wealth and influence to rewrite history. They donated to universities on the condition that certain facts were omitted. They controlled historical narratives through foundations and endowments. And they made sure their descendants grew up never knowing the truth about where the money came from. But the evidence is undeniable. There are shipping records, letters, account books, historical archives in China, Britain, and America. Researchers have documented it. Books have been written. The Delano Influence by Daniel W. Delano. When America First Met China by Eric J. Dolan. The Opium Clippers by Basil Lubbock. Yankee Traders, Old Coasters, and African Middlemen by George E. Brooks Jr. The proof exists, but it's not taught in schools. It's not in the museums. The average American has no idea. And the families want to keep it that way. Because if people knew the truth, it would destroy their carefully crafted reputations. It would raise uncomfortable questions. If the Delano family got rich selling drugs that destroyed millions of Chinese lives, how is FDR a hero? If the Forbes family made their fortune poisoning China, why do we celebrate Malcolm Forbes? If Yale's Skull and Bones was funded by opium money, what does that say about American elite institutions? The cognitive dissonance would be too much, so the truth stays buried. Here's the comparison they don't want you to make. In the 1980s and 1990s, the CIA was implicated in allowing cocaine to flow into American inner cities to fund Contra rebels in Nicaragua. The crack epidemic destroyed black communities. When that story broke, there was outrage, investigations, admissions. Gary Webb, the journalist who exposed it, was destroyed professionally, but the story was out. People understood that the government had allowed drugs to devastate communities for political gain. Now apply that same logic to the 1800s. American families deliberately flooded China with opium for profit. Millions of Chinese lives destroyed. The Chinese economy crippled. And those families used the profits to build American institutions that still exist today. Where's the outrage? Where's the reckoning? Where's the accountability? There isn't any. Because the families that did it became so rich and powerful, they could rewrite history. They could make sure their crimes were forgotten. And they could ensure their descendants lived in luxury, never confronting what their ancestors did. Let's be clear about the scale. Conservative estimates suggest that American firms made 50 or 100 million from the China opium trade between 1800 and 1860. That's 50 to 100 million in 1800s money. Adjusted for inflation, that's 1.5 to $3 billion in today's dollars. And that's just the profits. The total value of the opium moved was many times higher. This wasn't small-time smuggling. This was industrial-scale drug trafficking. Ships, warehouses, agents, bribes, a full logistical operation. The American firms involved employed thousands of people, Chinese middlemen, ship crews, Canton-based factors, Boston-based investors. It was a massive, organized criminal enterprise. Except it wasn't considered criminal in America. It was business. And the men who ran it were celebrated as successful merchants and captains of industry. Here's the modern equivalent to understand the scale. Imagine if a group of American billionaires today were caught running a cartel that flooded Mexico with fentanyl. Millions of Mexicans addicted, hundreds of thousands dead. And these billionaires used the profits to endow Harvard, fund political campaigns, and build museums. Then, 150 years later, their descendants are presidents, senators, and university chancellors. And no one talks about where the original money came from. That's what happened with the opium families. Except we're the descendants living in the world they built. And we're not supposed to ask questions. The Chinese remember. In China, the opium wars are a core part of national identity.
Yeah, man. And boy, Uncle Dog. All right. So let's get some precepts. Let's go here. Okay. And yeah, at the end of the day, this is let's see. Yeah, at the end of the day, man, this is how the devil is built. This is how the devil is made. You see? the thing is, he just been portraying himself, as the angel of light. Okay, like I say, this great humanitarian. This, he's all about forwarding life and humanity and civilization. He just offers, civilization so much, and you see. But when you go here, this book of Micah, chapter 6 and 10, it says, "Are they yet the treasures of wickedness in the house of the wicked, and the scant measure that is abominable? Shall I count them pure, all right, with the wicked balances and with the bag of deceitful weights?" Okay, so this devil, his come up has been very grimy. Like you see niggas, these movies they make about niggas that's grimy, they come up. Well, that's just a small scale of what Esau does on the international scale. A nigga do it in the community, okay, on the avenue. Esau does this internationally. Rob, steal, okay, lie, you know, murder. He does this on a large scale. Okay, smuggle. You see, it says, "Should I count them pure with the wicked balances and with the bag of deceit? For the rich men thereof are full of violence, and the inhabitants thereof have spoken lies, and their tongue is deceitful in their mouth." Okay, so here it is. These devils, um, having these devils have forced open on Moab, and then took them to war. Okay, for saying, "Look, y'all destroying us." Like, nigga, stop destroying us. And Moab tried to go to war, but it wasn't no match for the sword back then. Okay, so he lost. Moab lost both of them opium wars, and Esau, he really set up shop then. When he seen that Moab couldn't do nothing with him, he really set up shop in China. Okay, and that's what this devil does. Okay, this man is the wicked that the Bible speaks of. So, and then, like in the video, it said, here it is, and they made all this money off opium. All right, but then they couldn't get back to America, and they criminalized, okay, drugs. Okay, and there was another, also another reason, because he didn't want his middle class to be turned out like that. Because the middle class is the driving force behind, the wealth of the rich. Okay, it's a thriving middle class. So he didn't want his middle class turned out, but he can flood somebody else's middle class. Okay, and drug them out. You see, goddamn hypocrite, man. Okay, let's get a few more. Let's go here. Proverbs 13. This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 13 and 11. All right. It said, "Wealth gotten by vanity shall be diminished." Okay, because everything that this man has gotten, through vanity, through lies, okay, through destruction in other people's, at the expense of other people's destruction, he's going to be diminished. Everything that this man has hoarded up in wealth is going to be diminished and transferred, all right, to us, man. But he that gathereth by labor shall increase, and see, the Lord has us gathering, through labor. See, we haven't got the payoff, but a part of the payoff is we're going to get the wealth that this devil has hoarded up, and then some, plus many other perks, all right, immortality, many other things. Okay, but what this devil is hoarding up, the Lord got us laboring, and we're gonna get that because we're laboring in the spirit. We're gonna get that, and we're gonna constantly increase in righteousness, man. We'll never be diminished. You see, but Esau, he's just hoarding up his wealth, all right, to be diminished. You see, so let's go here. Matter of fact, we go to the book of Job. Look at the book of Job, chapter 20. All right, because that's what the devil's getting ready to do. All right, just vomit everything up, that he's gotten by ill-gotten gain. Okay, this is Job 28, and this is Job chapter 20, verse 18. It says, "That which he labored for shall he restore, and shall not swallow it down. According to his substance shall the restitution be, and he shall not rejoice therein." Yeah, so everything that this devil has gotten, he's going to restore to the righteous. Okay, he's not going to be able to continue to enjoy ill-gotten gains. Okay, it says according to his substance. So everything he got, that's what he owes. Okay, everything he got, include himself. All that free labor he got, he owe all that. Then some. All right, that's gonna be the true restitution, man. Okay, it says because he have oppressed and forsaken the poor, because he have violently taken away the house which he builded not, and this is what he does throughout the earth. This is what this man does throughout the earth, man. Okay, especially with the tribes. Okay, but the Lord got this man day to where he's gonna pay back everything. And then some. That's why I say give him double. It says, surely he shall not feel quietness in his belly. He shall not save of that which he desires. Because right now he desires more control. Okay. He desires more of the resources. Okay, which is New World Order, but he's not gonna pull it off. He's gonna begin the process of establishing it, but he's not gonna pull it off. It said, there shall none of his meat be left, therefore no man, all right, look for his goods in the fullness of his sufficiency. He shall be in straits. Every hand of the wicked, all right, which is the working class, shall come upon him. Well, Jake is in there too, because even um uh you go into, there should be none of his meat be left, all right, because that goes to resource, your livestock, you know his goods, because you're able, when you go outside, you just look at this man's wealth, his buildings everywhere, his infrastructure, you know, you're looking at Esau's wealth when this man's wealth, I say you got all these libraries and buildings and schools and this named after this nigga, this name, this company, this corporation, you know. But see, he's come to time, it's not going to be so. Okay, he's not going to have anything. Okay, there's going to be one trace of Edomite wealth in the earth. Okay, in the kingdom. You see, it said when he was about to fill his belly, okay, as the devil was getting closer to the New World Order, the Most High shall cast the fury of his wrath upon him and shall rain upon him while he is eating. Okay, shall rain upon him while he is eating. Okay, so this devil is getting ready to lose, man. Okay, the Lord has allowed this man to win, for a moment in time. Now we're in a time where he's about to lose. The Lord got this nigga number, man. So that was the point, Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified once again. We give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great example towards younger brothers. And peace and blessings, salutations to the hopeful next Shalom.